Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies and characters that make us feel seen. My co-host today is a veteran actor of the stage and screen. You may know him from the Emmy-nominated NBC drama This Is Us, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, or the Cinemax medical drama The Knick, an all-timer, directed by Steven Soderbergh. It is Chris Sullivan, ladies and gentlemen. Chris reunites with Soderbergh for his newest project, Presence. It is a supernatural horror film centered on a family who moves into a new home, but they are not alone when they get there. It is a grippingly innovative film from the POV of the apparition that occupies the home, and it is in theaters right now, and I really liked it, guys. It totally worked for me. Chris joins Feeling Seen to speak about Presence, his very own This Is Us podcast, and the 1985 adventure film, The Goonies. Goonies never say die, and neither do we, so let's get into our conversation with Chris Sullivan. Chris Sullivan, welcome to the show, and what else do the people need to know about you before we get started?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I mean, you've hit the highlights. I guess the only other thing that's kind of going on right now that if people want to join us is that Sterling and Mandy and myself have teamed up for a podcast of our own called That Was Us.
It was right there. I'm so glad you guys took it.
Yeah, and it's we've decided that the process of This Was Us flew by so fast that we wanted to go back and experience it for ourselves. So we're doing a rewatch podcast, and we are about halfway through season 2 right now. And people can check us out wherever they get their podcasts.
You know, retrospective podcasts are things that have come up. Like I hear so often the ad for Ted Danson telling me to listen to the Where Everybody Knows Your Name Cheers podcast. But that's obviously reflecting on something that is like of a different generations. Like it's like, oh, we're getting back into this and old friends. This Is Us is a fairly recent, but was such a cultural phenomenon. How has the conversing about it been apart from being in the center of it? Is that any part of the sort of, that's always the processing that I'm super interested in, is that cultural anthropology of like, what were we to the time and the place? Like, do you guys dig into that at all? Or do you think about that at all?
Yes, because the country was in a big transition at the time, out of the Obama presidency and on to the next. And it was a fraught period where people seemed to be polarized in a lot of ways. But This Is Us seemed to be this uniting experience for people. And it was also an experience that was ended intentionally by the creator after the end of season 6. Most TV shows on network TV that experience that kind of success will go until
the wheels fall off. Syndicate.
Until the wheels fall off. Yeah. But in this new world where syndication is no longer a thing, which happened kind of right in the middle of us filming that. You know, we were aiming for 100 episodes, and then at about season 3, we all kind of looked at each other and went, there's not going to be any syndication.
That's nuts.
This is all going to stay right on their streaming platform. Wow. And we will not enjoy the golden era of syndicated television. But the creator, Dan Fogelman, knew where he wanted to end this show from the moment he started this show. And he knew how he wanted to get there. And he knew he didn't want to pad these seasons. You know, a lot of these shows have 22 episodes a season, 25 episodes a season. We had 18. And in our final episode, 2 seasons, we had 16. Because the conservation of story and the conciseness with which he wanted to tell it, he knew where he was going and he knew how to get there, and he wasn't going to compromise or mistreat his audience by padding it with a bunch of unnecessary episodic television. And so this podcast is really us going back because the audience, in a way, felt like they wanted it to continue as well. And it was obviously a heavy show for people in a lot of ways. It dealt with trauma, it dealt with grief, it dealt with a lot of these issues. And so this is our way to kind of go back and walk through it with people and help them talk about these things.
And it feels ridiculous to not acknowledge it. Mandy Moore recently lost her home in the fires here in Los Angeles, in the Palisades fires. Are you a Los Angelino? Are you how are you are you around in this area, or do you live elsewhere?
I also live in Los Angeles. Milo also lost his homes and is expecting his first child. We have about a dozen other friends who've lost their homes. It's hard to explain to people because I get messages of concern from friends outside of California, and it's even worse than it looks.
Yeah,
it's hard to explain to people that, you know, if you're from Champaign, Illinois, the size of the fire would have consumed that town 2 times over.
Oh my God.
You know, and if people are looking to help, you know, a friend of mine, Jen Garner, is working with World Central Kitchen to feed first responders and to feed people who are displaced currently. And yeah, we'll take all the help we can get. It's going to be a long, long road to recovery. Yeah,
if you know, it's in the beginning stages of it, like, you know, there's not going to be a podcast about this, but this is the thing that is happening now. And this is the, you know, people you follow, like famous folks that you follow who are either in LA, have friends in LA. I assure you, if you follow any famous people you do, people are being so incredible about posting mutual aid, posting resources, places you can volunteer, places you can donate. Paris Hilton has been, it seems like, I think, living at an animal shelter in Pasadena since all this started happening and she lost her home. You can find ways to connect to what is going on and to facilitate the rebuilding process and the putting things back together for people here. And, you know, we encourage you to do so. Los Angeles, despite your reputation for what you might have heard if you don't live here, can be a real close-knit community. And we really love it here, a lot of us. And this is a scar across our hearts for sure.
Yeah, it's a town that's built around an industry, which is an industry that tells stories and that, you know, reflects the world back to itself in a way. And after the pandemic and then the strikes and now this, it's like we're having a hard time figuring out where our foothold is. So.
I think the movie that you have chosen specifically and the spirit of that movie and the characters that we're going to talk about within that, the sense of community, the sense of building, the sense of purpose and cause, and embarking on really an adventure of unknown outcome where all you have is like your belief in each other to get you through. I think that is the bridge that I can make here. And I'm going to ask you to explain to us what the movie is that you have brought for us to discuss today.
Yeah, you know, you asked a very interesting question, and I had never actually thought about it. And then I have realized that since I've been on social media, my social media profile is husband, father, friend, Goonie.
Would never say die.
I have been a Goonie since I saw that movie.
Now, did you, when it was coming, it was like, I saw this when it came out when I was a kid. Like I was first with, wow.
It is the movie that my parents rented from Blockbuster that I watched over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
Maybe once in a while throwing Beetlejuice back in there.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I just can't kind of believe, especially as I've watched all of these actors grow.
Oh, wow. I mean, even Kiwi Kwan, like, what an incredible continuation of the Goonie arc.
Yeah, to watch Josh Brolin become who he is, Sean Astin, you know, carrying the ring. It was a formative movie for me. And I didn't actually realize how formative until you asked the question.
That is so, as a child of the state of Oregon, Goonies held that like special local place in our hearts too. When my first night at the University of Oregon, they had at the time it was an annual tradition on the big lawn outside of one of the dorm complexes. They would screen Goonies, because this is part of the fabric of our being as being children of Oregon. And so what was it that hit you about Goonies when you first saw it?
Well, the interesting, obviously, it is a movie from a time when most, if not every movie, is still through the male gaze.
Yeah.
And this particularly is through the, 13-year-old male gaze.
100%.
And every character in this movie is like a bit of a personality pulled from the same little boy. Every little boy is a rebel.
Mm-hmm.
Every little boy is a compassionate friend. Every little boy is a nerd. Every little boy is a chubby little outsider. And so what you end up with is this spidered out group of Goonies
mm-hmm.
who decide that they're going to go on an adventure.
One-eyed Willie. Yeah, he was the most famous pirate in his time. My dad told me all about him once.
Dad'll do anything to get you to go to sleep.
No. See, One-eyed Willie stole treasure once. And it was full of rubies and emeralds and diamonds. And then he loaded it all up onto a ship. And then they sailed away into the sunset until the British king, he found out about it, and then he set up this whole armada to go out after him. And then the armada, it took him a couple weeks, but then they caught up with Willie, and then there was a whole big war between the armada and Willie's ship, the Inferno. And during the firefight, there was just guns bursting here and cannons bursting there. And then Willie fled because he didn't want to stay around because he knew he'd get killed if he stayed around. And then he got into this cave. And then the British, they blew up the walls all around him. And he got caved in. And he's been there ever since. Forever. And ever trapped.
That sense of adventure lived in me. Like, every friend that I was with, what are we going to get into today? What are we going to explore today? We found this hole in the ground. I wonder where it goes. And then not only that, you've got your Josh Brolins, you've got Chet and his bucket. You have the two, and of course, because of the male gaze, you have the two different female leads who are like, the cheerleader and Martha Plimpton, who I had the real crush on at the time, who was the nerdy tough girl.
Oh, absolutely. And for the young queers out there, Steph was 100% gay culture. If
That's
you were
right.
a little future gay watching the Goonies.
That's right. And let's just put it this way. There was something for everybody in that movie. You know what I mean?
I got it! I don't got it.
You klutz.
Hope it's not a deposit bottle.
This is ridiculous. It's crazy. I feel like I'm babysitting, except I'm not getting paid.
Wait, listen to that.
What?
So what?
Sounds like my grandfather taking a leak, Mikey.
Throwsville.
No, it's deep. Like there's a hole or a passageway. It's real deep.
Get out of the way.
Miranda's being so sweet.
Oh, come on! Where are you? You're in the clouds, and we are in a basement.
And it just did everything for me. It activated my sense of adventure. It activated my awareness of romance. It activated my sense of teamwork, like all of these things. And I think, I wanted to be Mikey.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be Sean Astin.
Besides, we gotta get to the police.
Maybe Chunk already got to the police.
Maybe Chunk is dead.
Don't say that. Never say that. Goonies never say die.
I'm not a Goonie. I want to go home.
I forgot. But still, don't you realize? The next time you see Sky, it'll be over another town. The next time you take a test, it'll be in some other school. Our parents, they want the best of stuff for us. But right now they gotta do what's right for them. 'Cause it's their time. Their time. Up there. Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.
It just we've had a great spree lately of talking about 80s tentpole, formative Gen X, early millennial films. We've lately had we have had, I think we've had Back to the Future. We have had Dirty Dancing. We have had Stand By Me.
Yeah.
And like this too, I think such a, like the way you kind of described it, like that sense of like the adventure and like what the feeling among you and your friends, like I feel like it so encapsulates sort of this genre of movie, like the genre of what are we going to get into now?
Right.
Like find a hole in the ground, find a car that travels through time.
That's right.
Hear about like, did a kid die out on the train tracks? Like the tiny kernel of something either mundane or so ordinary and representative of like the passage of life that then becomes the coming of age vehicle in the most extraordinary fashion. And in a way that was like an adventure that now I feel like adventure in that way can feel a bit more outside of the superhero realm. Like I feel like that is something the Guardians movies did really well, particularly among the scope of superhero movies. But what are we going to get into now? Adventure can feel more, it seems like, localized at younger audiences, as opposed to these movies feeling like they can be a melting pot of interests for the various ages of folks, the 4 quadrant ages of folks watching them.
Yeah, they're movies that keep the balloon in the air of anything is possible. Like you're still of the age where you have not left the garden, so to speak. You still are living in this innocence where anything is possible, anything can happen. If I can cut this cardboard the right way and strap it to my arms, I can fly. Like the amount of useless energy that went into trying to figure out how you would get a skateboard to hover. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
we saw it. It was in the movie, so it's possible. How can we have one of these things? You know, and I don't know the last time I've seen one of those movies.
That was, I mean, that's, I was having an interview with a filmmaker, Oz Perkins, recently about his upcoming movie, The Monkey, which like is being put out by Neon. He put Longlegs out with them to tremendous success last year. And he's very known as like as a filmmaker who makes horror, and not necessarily even conventional or studio friendly horror. He's very much carved his own lane and sort of this grounded in the earth, like dark, quiet, dread sort of situation. But this new one is I feel like he is a kind of, in the sort of insularity that there can be within like the horror fan community, and a sort of praising at times of a like, you know, they're not beholden to anybody and this is fresh and this is sure. The Monkey feels fresh and it is exciting and it's funny and it's weird. It reminds me of Malignant, another James Wan produced movie that nobody knew what to do with when it arrived and has since developed like a huge following in fandom. But like talking to Oz about it, like his biggest source codes for this movie, you think of somebody with his filmography, his biggest source codes for The Monkey are pictures produced by Chris Columbus, Steven Spielberg movies, Robert Zemeckis pictures. And it's so, it feels like such it feels very enlivening to me to know that a filmmaker whose filmography almost feels like sort of impervious to that kind of sentimentality still feels that and wants to create a movie that incorporates the DNA of that kind of screen magic that we feel like we have to intentionally bring back and put in front of people, because it's not just going to arrive organically in front of us by accident anymore. It's not by chance that those movies arrive in front of us.
It's not only that it's not by chance, it's becoming more and more difficult because of the world we live in. With cellular phone technology, internet technology, the wealth of the world's knowledge at our fingertips. Movies like The Goonies, movies like Scream, these horror films, so many plots are dismantled by a cell phone.
Yeah, like literally dismantled to the point where people will watch on TikTok in 1.5-minute, 2-minute bites.
Right. And I don't even mean the viewing. I mean the actual plot of a movie. It's like, why don't they just call someone on their cell phone? Everything has to be like, oh God, I've got no bars. There's no service.
Yeah.
You have to like write it in. You have to write it in because we've removed, even for ourselves in real life, a sense of adventure, a sense of being lost, a sense of getting into something where you don't know the outcome. You know, getting on the road and just driving in a direction without Google Maps, all of these things. And the prevalence of the horror genre, which I love, I've always loved, and the kind of I guess disappearing of the young adventure story, the coming of age story. I mean, I'm sitting here. I should have thought. Well, I literally can't think of it. And maybe it's because I've already come of age, and these movies are not. These movies are not in my realm of awareness, but they're not as prevalent. And I think the world is full of so much fear currently that we gravitate to these horror films, this genre, because this genre is therapeutic. This genre allows us to explore our deepest fears, our deepest worry in a safe environment, from the safety of our couch, from the safety of the movie theater, and to feel what it would feel like to be terrified, to be alone, to be isolated, and still be able to turn on the lights when it's all said and done. And as wonderful as it is, because I love all of these scary movies, it is a bit of a sign of the times that people are so attracted to fear and to experiencing fear. And
I'm going to reserve a question that I have jumping off from what you immediately said to take this into like a conversation about presence. And this movie really worked for me. I really enjoyed it. Your character is one of your character is one of the most just like, it's hard to like, I feel like it's rare to get like just an endearing character because everyone has to have like a tragic flaw. You just have, you're a good dad. You're a good dad in this character, in this movie Presence. And the movie is about a family that moves into a home that it is a ghost story from the point of view of the ghost. And so when we first experience this home, we're just sort of traveling around it on a swivel. And if you understand the construct of the movie, you're like, okay, we must be in ghost POV right now. And if you don't get it, it's like, what are we looking at? What are we looking through? Whose eyes are looking out this window? A new family has moved into this home, and we are learning on a journey of learning what the need and the purpose of the ghost is, because ghost, as we learn from fiction, a spirit with unfinished business perhaps, and we learn about the internal struggles of this family and how the drama of this family intervenes with the presence of this ghost and how they affect one another. And what Steven Soderbergh will just do over and over and over again, seemingly till the day of his death, is say, oh, there's no roadmap for how I'm going to do this thing. Oh, well. And he will just charge forth and do, oh, there's not a precedent. There's not a model of success for the thing I'm doing. Oh, well, hope it works out. And he will do it anyway. And it feels like that spirit of innovation lives in resistance to what I feel like so many film fans can feel like the sort of, little boxes made of ticky-tacky sort of ultimate taxonification and siloing of genre and process and what is, quote unquote, deemed to be a hit. And Steven Soderbergh will just simply be himself as a creator relentlessly.
Yes, he has said openly in the process of interviews for this movie, he refuses to do anything in which he is not challenging himself in a new way. And it's not interesting to him if he can't attempt a new trick. On the first day of shooting, he said to Lucy and I, he goes, yeah, I hope this works. Because if it doesn't, there's no plan B. I think by maybe about day 2 or 3, it was like, okay, this is working. Because, of course, he is editing as he goes. And we were slated to shoot this movie in 14 days. We shot it in 11 days.
Wild.
He shot it on a Sony DSLR A7, which is a commercially available camera. It's an expensive one, obviously, but not something that's out of the reach of a consumer. He built a special 8-pound rig, and we shot the entire thing on a 14 millimeter prime super wide lens. And we shot it in 11 days in a single house in Cranford, New Jersey. And it was thrilling. We stepped into the void with Steven Soderbergh to see if this was going to work. And it works. Because of that POV, it is a type of of fear that I have not felt in a movie before. And I didn't realize I was going to feel it until I saw what he put together, which is the entirety of the film is from the perspective of this presence. So very, very quickly, each viewer becomes the presence. You become the ghost, and you immediately realize that you cannot reach out and affect the world, that you are disconnected, that you are isolated, that you can only watch as things unfold. And as we know, things unfold, and you want to scream, and you want to warn people, and you want to whatever the thing is. And it's we had people walking out of the premiere at Sundance, getting up and like walking right past Steven, walking right past Lucy. And I'm like, that's kind of rude. The movie's 85. The movie's 85 minutes. You can't make it through 85 minutes.
It is. It's tight. There's not a lot of spare time here.
Well, as Steven said, it was like it works, but if you go too long, it falls apart. Like as far as the POV shot goes, and it turned out from people in the lobby, they said no, those people, they just couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take the anxiety of, and it's a very patient anxiety that David and David Koepp, the writer, put together. The movie waits, it waits, and it waits, and it waits, and it waits. And then when things unfold, it unfolds so fast that it's quite the release.
We are not ghosting you, I swear, but it is time for a break. More with Chris Sullivan on Presence when we return. And then at the end, with the Oscar nominations coming out, I will have one quick thing about the nomination/win that I am hoping for most. So stick around after that tease.
The Flophouse is a podcast where we watch a bad movie and then we talk about it.
Robert Shaw in Jaws, and they're trying to figure out how to get rid of the ghoulies, and he scratches his nails and goes, I'll get you, ghoulie.
He's just standing above the toilet with a harpoon. No, I was just looking forward to you going through the other ways in which Wild Wild West is historically inaccurate.
You know how much movies cost nowadays when you add in your popcorn and your bagel bites and your cheese fritters?
You can't go wrong with a Henry Cavill mustache. Here at Henry Cavill Mustaches, the only supplier.
The Flophouse. New episodes every Saturday. Find it at MaximumFun.org.
Ego sum John Hodgman.
Et ego sum Janet Varney.
And we're the hosts of E Pluribus Motto, a podcast dedicated to exploring the mottos of every state in the Union.
Every episode, we will spotlight one state and discuss its official symbols, the motto, flowers, birds, beverages, songs, and even official state muffins.
Plus, we'll hear from guests whose lives have been inspired by the state's iconography and from residents who call that state home.
Bring some snacks, a map, and your travel journal because this podcast is a virtual journey like no other.
Audi nostrum e pluribus motto quae libet alia lunae de maximum fun.
And for the Latin challenged among you and us, listen to E Pluribus Motto every other Monday on Maximum Fun.
This is, I heard you on another podcast having a conversation that was really interesting about like actors responding to the technology, like actors responding to the type of thing that's filming them. Yeah. If they know it's a closer up shot, like the acting, like things get a lot smaller. And you were saying how like the point of view of the lens in this movie is essentially 180 degrees. If you think you're out of frame, you're not
still
out
on
of
camera.
frame. And I wanted to hear from you about, with someone with so much theater under their belt and who is used to the whole, who is so steeped in the whole stage point of view of an audience's perspective, how does that, like, is there a way that stage awareness and that broad awareness of eyes on you came into your performance in this with such a broad awareness of the point of view of the camera?
Yeah, I definitely benefited from two things, from my experience on stage and from working with Steven before. Those two things gave me a bit of a head start. That being said, working like this is wholly unique. It is the first time I've ever worked like this. It will probably be the last because this style is so specific to the story.
Yeah, it doesn't, like, Steven Soderbergh may never do this kind of work
he
again.
Won't.
Like,
He
this is
won't,
like, I did
because
it.
the only reason it works, and Steven has said this, Steven for a long time has publicly, violently railed against the POV shot. He hates it. He does not like a first-person perspective. He thinks it's stupid. He thinks whatever. He thinks it's ugly, and it's not worth our time. And then he goes, wait, unless you never turn around to see, because the POV shot is telling the audience, is planting the question in the audience: who's looking? What's seeing? Whose perspective are we engaged in? And the only reason a filmmaker turns around after the POV is to reveal to the audience what is seeing, who is seeing. But in this case, there's nothing to turn around on. So there's no reason to turn around. It took me about a day to figure out how this was going to work. And on Steven's set, because he operates his own camera, there's no monitors. There's no video village. There's no chairs. You don't sit around and wait. You go and you show up, and the days are very short. He's very concise, and you move on. But eventually I had to stop him and be like, you need to show me what this looks like. I have to see, because I've never seen this before. And so I had to look at these frames and realize, okay, wow, if I'm in the center of the frame, I'm actually the smallest thing on camera.
Right, yeah.
And if I'm off to the edges, I'm actually the largest. There's a scene out on the back patio that you've the back deck of this house, where I don't have a lot to say in this scene. And Steve, this is one of the only notes Steven gave me the whole time. He's like, Chris, in this shot, you have to stand still. And I was like,
because you're going to be so much of the frame.
Yeah, because I'm a third of the screen, because I'm so big.
I know exactly what shot you're talking about. Now that I'm thinking about it, you really are
and
the
I'm
frame.
standing there looking through the window, and everybody's in the back, and they're tiny because of the lens we're using, and it's stuff like that that is hard to understand, and so you need to navigate it and figure it out. But for the most part, we were just living. We were just living in this house. We weren't surrounded by a bunch of equipment and crew and lights. It was all practically lit. It was just a very quiet, all dressed in black Steven Soderbergh wearing martial arts slippers to keep himself as quiet as possible, and a very quiet sound man with a boom mic behind him. And after a day or two, they just disappeared, because we're so used to being surrounded by hot lights and two cameras and 6 or 7 people, and so it was a really freeing experience.
Well, and it's such a it plays for the construct of like a suspense genre so well, because one of the, like, Leigh Whannell in making his Invisible Man, like, one of the things that was most frightening about that movie is when he would just let people keep talking and he would just drift the camera away to show you open space and not do anything with it, but then he would just put you back with the characters so you could wonder, is he there? Is he there?
He creates that same kinetic energy that M. Night Shyamalan creates in his early films, where one of my favorite moments in movie history is in Signs, when Joaquin Phoenix comes up out of the basement after they've been in the basement all night long, and he just locks the camera on that staircase, and Joaquin walks to the top, and he walks to the left, and just disappears. And instead of cutting to what he's doing up there, he just holds on that staircase. And in that 3 or 4 seconds, the audience is thinking of every possibility of what is about to happen. And it is so exciting, so exciting. And then Joaquin just walks back into frame and goes, yeah, come on up. But he lets the audience do the work. And that's a great collaboration. That's a great awareness to have. And Steven and David in this film are the same. They have a great respect for the audience. They're not patronizing them with a bunch of exposition. They're letting them fill in some gaps, letting them figure out the outcome. It's not overly explained, which is my favorite type of thriller.
in sort of reading you talking about your early part of career, how coming out to Los Angeles after you graduate, you're going to pursue acting. You come out to Los Angeles where you start getting involved in theater. You get your Actors Equity card, and you've talked about like how naivete was really one of the best things you had in your toolkit at the time. And that is such a recurring theme on this show, is either what people didn't know that allowed them to throw themselves headlong into this career, or a healthy amount of delusion that allowed them to suspend their awareness of the doubts and the pitfalls so that they could dive into this creative life anyway. And I wanted to hear about the role in your life of delusion or naivete as a necessity for at least a starting out creative in the industry.
I mean, there's an audacity to pursuing a creative life in any way that's like, look at me, or listen to me, or look what I made, or hey, watch this. I mean, that's essentially. I mean, it's my favorite thing to do as I walk by Video Village on any set. I go, hey, watch this, because you have to have that confidence and that audacity. But yeah, early on, there was nobody in my sphere of existence who was telling me that it wasn't possible. And that's so important. And it's ironic that some of the most important things that have happened to me in my career are things that people didn't do. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to tell somebody that, yeah, you can do it. Go ahead, give it a shot. That's fine. Encouragement is great. But it is so important to not be a vehicle of doubt for people unless it involves their physical safety. Because those little seeds, those little inner critics can burrow in and lodge themselves in people's psyche and get in the way of everything. And I just didn't have any of those. And I don't know why. I mean, obviously my parents must have felt some fear, about a child. Wow. Okay. 4 years of college. It's expensive college. It's going to be theater. Okay. All right. One of the other big kind of really practical gifts that my parents gave me was, 4 years of college debt free. They sent me to college, and I didn't have to spend the next 2 decades of my life paying off college debt, which I've told them, several times. That is, now that I'm an incredible gift for me to essentially go get the bad out, go to a place where I could do bad acting for 4 years without it being in public, without there being any repercussions, I could do 4 years of overacting and stupid plays and dumb jokes and take some risks and feel safe, and then go out into the world and attempt to turn it into a career, which I was more than happy to do. I was living in Chicago, and I was a working actor, and in Chicago, if you are a working actor in Chicago and you are active in the theater community, and you are stringing together some voiceover jobs and maybe a commercial every couple of years, and grabbing a role in the Batman movie that's coming through town, whatever the thing is, you can make a living, and you can have a family, and you can own a home, and you can, I was perfectly happy to be a blue collar, middle class working actor in Chicago. And then this audition came out of nowhere to audition for a Broadway play in New York, directed by Tommy Kail, who directed Hamilton and In the Heights, and yeah, that was it. My wife and I got married, and 5 days after we got married, we drove to New York so I could start rehearsals for that play.
And my last question then would be, as like someone who grows up and just like, oh, it's going to be theater? Well, okay. there is that support and that lack of, you know, like you said, the things that don't happen, and meaning like the doubt and the questioning and the undermining. What does, like, to grow up to become a creative, what does watching a movie like Goonies and growing up in that era of what are we going to get into now? What does that do for somebody who's going to grow up and have to sort of embrace delusion enough to pursue an impractical career? Like, what is Goonies Never Say Die embolden you to do when you are embarking on something that many people would tell you, if, thankfully, who didn't have your ear, that would have been an unreasonable decision coming out of college?
It's all unreasonable. It's all unreasonable. Not to plant doubt, but that doesn't mean that it's not valuable. I mean, everything, any great accomplishment in the history of the world at some point was considered unreasonable. It's all unreasonable until, you know, Steven Soderbergh deciding to shoot Presents with one camera from the perspective of Steven, that is unreasonable. But if we don't take these risks and we don't challenge ourselves and we don't continue to make art that reminds people to challenge themselves and to go on that adventure, then we are going to lose sight of all hope, and we will live in a world filled with horror movies.
We live in a world that manifests to life its horror movies.
I love a horror movie, but right now the movies that succeed are $300 million tent poles and horror movies. Mm-hmm. That's it. And the coming of age adventure film is not with us, and it needs to be. And that's why Goonies Never Say Die. And the movie holds up, y'all. So if they're not making that movie today, you just watch Goonies. And you know that anything is possible.
Well, there's nothing else to go out on but that. Chris Sullivan, a Goonie after my own heart. Thank you so much for taking the time and having this conversation today. This has been an absolute blast for myself personally.
It was my pleasure. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again anytime you want. You have a great rest of your day. Good luck out there with presents, and take care to you and your loved ones and your community. LA is behind you. We are LA, and we have your back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again to Chris Sullivan. That was truly a wonderful conversation. What a delightful man to speak with, and what a cool career, and a cool approach to a career. Just that was such a wonderful, heartening conversation. I would have him on every week if I could. You can see Presents right now at your local theater, and it is scary good. Heyo! And now that one quick thing before I go. My cause as an Oscar watcher has evolved over the past couple of years to where I now invest myself fully in one award, one win, like one person every year. Everything else is like, oh, that's cool, or that was annoying. But I really put all my feelings on the line for one thing. And with her success at the Golden Globes, with the success of the film as an independent release, a movie distribution, way to get in on that movie, of the Substance Coralie Farge's French horror of celebrity in the beauty industrial complex. I'm putting it on Demi Moore. I'm pushing my chips in this Oscar year for Demi Moore. That is the one trophy I am truly invested in. It is the one that I will shout, either with glee or fury, depending on how it goes. I will try to let everything else roll off my back and not have so many feelings about the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I'm putting it all in for Demi Moore. That Golden Globe speech, her 40 years into this career, saying that Golden Globe was the first time she had received this kind of recognition for her work in this industry. Damn right, man. We are betting on that horse all the way through. I want to see more hardware for Demi. I want to see this win. I want to see her honored for her career for this performance. But I mean, the career is not detached from it, but she brought it so hard in The Substance, you guys. I would warm my heart if her and Pamela Anderson for The Last Showgirl could just each get an Oscar and be like, well, it was a tie and these were the two best of the year. That'd be fantastic. But in lieu of that very outside scenario, it's all Demi Moore for me. And that is our show. We're going out for, let's hope for Demi Moore this Oscar season. You can follow us on Instagram here at Feeling Seen Pod, or you can send us an email at feelingseen@maximumfun.org. We are also on Blue Sky, just like me. Search Feeling Seen, or if you want to follow me, I'm Jor Crew, Jorcru, there and on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Danielle Huesius. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported
directly
by you.